Hey, what's going on, No Nation? CJ Wilson here with Dope Talk, here to bring you guys, like I said, we've been doing this segment for the last couple weeks in regards to pre-spring positional breakdowns. Now we finally made our way over to defense. My favorite segment of football. Of course, the three phases of the game: offense, defense, special teams. Defense is my baby. That's my favorite. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. And I know you guys like the trenches. First up is the defensive end position. I'm really excited about this position group and the potential they have for the 2024 football season. But before we get started, On the Trail is brought to you by the realtor Jude Paul. Jude is a realtor in Southwest Florida, but services the entire state of Florida. Again, whether you're trying to buy your home or sell your home, Jude is your guy. You're trying to buy or sell, he's going to donate 20%. That's right, 20% of the closing costs back in your pocket. So again, you get a good deal on buying or selling your home, and you get money back in your pocket. Jude is a big time FSU fan and knows how to take care of NOLES. So again, if you're trying to buy your home or sell your home, whichever it may be, Jude is willing to donate some of the proceeds to the Battles End Collective. Again, you guys know how important Battles End is in regards to FSU, the main NIL collective for the Seminoles. So again, Jude is willing to donate to those guys. You can reach out to Jude at www.homesforknows.com. Again, it's www.homesforknows.com. All right, guys, like I said, I want to go ahead and jump into it. The positional breakdown, defensive end. This is going to be an interesting one. This is my another position unit I'm probably excited about. Probably the second next to receivers. Um, the second most interesting battle, so to speak, this spring practice in regards to who's going to replace Jared Verse, who's going to replace that production, and just a depth standpoint, right? If you guys look at the last couple of years, the depth really hasn't been great for the defensive end position, but I do believe this upcoming year we have a lot of good depth with a lot of good sides to kind of back it up. First up, we're going to talk about Patrick Payton, the longtime defensive end for FSU, big time playmaker. I believe he's one of the best defensive ends in the ACC and one of the better defensive ends in the country. Talk about production. This past season, Patrick Payton had 44 total tackles, 14 and a half tackles for loss, and 7 sacks. Now, I gave you guys those stats. This is another accolade that really jumps out and kind of sets Patrick Payton apart from every other defensive end in the conference and in the country. He had 10 pass breakups as a defensive end. 10 pass breakups as a defensive end. So you factor in all of that production and just the way he affects the game in different ways. If you have 10 pass breakups as a defensive back, that's a hell of a year. That's a great year, and you're competing for all conference honors. Patrick Payton had more pass breakups than the majority of the defensive backs in the ACC. I believe the leader in pass breakups in the ACC was, of course, Noel and Ronaldo Green. Zaire Thomas, he was up there as well with 10 plus. But Patrick Payton, 10 pass breakups as a defensive end, along with being effective in the pass rush with those 7 sacks and 14 and a half tackles for loss. He had a really great year this past year. It was kind of overshadowed due to the year that Jared Verse and Braden Fisk had, but Pat Pitt was just as dominant. And when he wasn't, and it was a crazy, it was the games we played, because it'd be situations to where we would rush the passer and we'll use Jared Verse, Braden Fisk, and those guys to get to the passer, and we'll have Pat Payton sit and pretty much mirror the quarterback's throwing arm and try to impede his passing lanes with breaking up the pass or just getting in the way. It happened all the time. He's 6'5", 20 to 50 pounds, a very long arm. So again, he affects the game in a multitude of ways, getting his hands up, making those pass breakups. We have 10 pass breakups as a defensive back. Anytime you have 10 pass breakups, I'm assuming you're talking about not defensive back, a defensive end, but if anytime you have that many pass breakups, I'm assuming you're talking about a cornerback or a safety, and those guys made some all-conference honors. But again, Patrick Payton this upcoming year, he's going to be the alpha dog within the defensive end room. He's pretty much going to be taking over the reins from the Jeremiah Johnson to the Jared Verse. Now it's the Patrick Payton show. He is the best player within the defensive end room, one of the best players overall on defense. Now it's time for him to take those reins as being the dominant defensive end for FSU. Moving on to the next defensive end, we're going to talk about transfer portal guy from Oregon State, one of the most highly regarded guys or defensive end out of the transfer portal, Sione Lolohea. Again, 6'3", 6'4", 20 to 60 pounds. That's a thing, right? Just bear with me when I start talking about measurables and things like that with this defensive end room. So again, 6'3", 6'4", 20 to 60 pounds, very productive. A second team all Pac-12 this past season for Oregon State. 47 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He had a multitude of pressures and things like that. I think he had multiple force fumbles as well. Very active, very high motor, plays to the whistle is blown, and he just doesn't quit, right? He affects the game in a multitude of ways as well. Just high motor, getting after quarterback, being relentless in his pass rush, and that efforts rewarded him this past season with being one of the better defensive end in the Pac-12 and being named second team All Pac-12. USC and a couple others were after him out of the transfer portal. Mike Norvell and staff did a really good job. Of course, you guys know the track record we have with defensive ends with Coach John Pachulis. Also want to give a shout out to Derek Ray, the general manager for FSU. As you guys know, he was previously at Oregon State, and I'm not gonna say half the reason, but a big portion of the reason Oregon State roster was very good is because of Derek Ray and the scouting he did for those guys. So to have that relationship carry over and bring in Sione in as well, big time gift for FSU. I really think this guy is going to make a lot of plays for FSU. So again, like I said, 6'6", 20 to 60 pounds, a big guy on the edge that can set the edge as well and not get bullied in certain situations of the run game. Moving on. This is another defensive end that I'm very excited about. Probably the most athletic defensive end, the more explosive defensive end that we acquired out of the transfer portal. Tomiwa Durojaiye, transfer defensive end out of West Virginia. A very big kid, 6'4", around 280 pounds, and very explosive as well. This guy is going to be a jack of all trades for FSU in regards to how they use him. We could go big rotation in regards to our pass rush guy, or third down situations. You could have a situation where you have Patrick Payton and Sione, Marvin Jones Jr., who I'm going to speak about in a second, at the two defensive ends. And you could have Joshua Farmer, who's one of the better pass rush defensive tackles in the ACC. And you could move Tomiwa inside at 280 and get the disadvantage over the guard at, due to, the guard not being as light-footed or as quick as the offensive tackle in regards to stopping the pass rush. You could create that matchup nightmare in the inside with a 280-pound defensive end that can do it all. He's going to be a great edge setter for FSU. Very strong, very physical, very violent. He also plays through the whistle. Very aggressive. You could tell in his tape he doesn't stop until the whistle is blown, the ball is dead. Was pretty productive this past year for his redshirt freshman year at West Virginia. Had 23 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks. So he has 3 years left to play coming to his redshirt sophomore year at FSU. That's another thing, too. They got a lot of guys that have multiple years to play. And he was very specific in one of his reasons for coming to FSU. He wants to get developed, right? He wants to get developed by one of the better two defensive line coaches in the country, in Odell Haggins and John Pachulis. I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You look at all the defensive linemen Odell and John has developed within their careers and within the recent short stint at FSU within the last 4 years. I mean, it speaks for itself, right? I think we have 4 defensive ends drafted so far under John Pachulis, with Pat Payton on deck for this upcoming year. And of course, Braden Fisk is one of the better defensive tackles in the country this past year. And then you have, of course, Josh Farmer and a multitude of guys. Josh Farmer should be the better defensive tackle in the ACC this upcoming year. So you're talking about just a wealth of experience in regards to productive players for FSU, and those guys going on to the next level and being productive. And I feel like Tomiwa is going to fit right in. I'm really excited about him and his potential. The early reviews you hear is he's a very hard worker, brings his attitude to right every day, pretty much a construction worker type of deal. You bring your lunchbox and your pail hat, and you go to work. This guy is a quiet guy in regards to certain things, but when it comes to playing on the field, he's very specific in the things he wants and the things he's looking for from FSU. You also hear maturity as well in regards to how he carries himself. So I'm very excited about this kid. I think he'd be a big-time game changer for FSU. All right, guys, and this is the last addition from the transfer portal in regards to the defensive ends that we added this upcoming year. More like a homecoming, so to speak. Marvin Jones Jr., the former 5-star defensive end transfer out of the University of Georgia. As you guys know, that name sounds very familiar, as Marvin Jones Sr. was one of the all-time great linebackers from FSU, Dick Buckers, winning things like that. So again, to have his son back at FSU, not necessarily back at FSU, to transfer to FSU is a big-time thing. Not going to get into the backstory of all that as far as, recruitment and that type of deal. We already covered that once Marvin Jones committed. But just from a sheer place perspective, 6'5", 250 pounds. 6'5", 250 pounds. Has all the measurables you need from a defensive end. Played at Georgia the last couple of years. As you guys remember, one of the main reasons Jermaine Johnson transferred to FSU was, of course, more opportunities to rush the passer due to a loaded Georgia defensive line room, but also scheme-wise, right? You guys know Georgia runs a 3-4 base versus a 4-3 base And they asked a lot of their edge guys to be stand-up pass rushers and have some linebacker responsibilities versus just putting their hands in the dirt, getting after the pass rusher, the passer, excuse me. The opposite of FSU. We let our defensive ends do work. We let our defensive ends be creative at their position. Of course, we have certain techniques and things like that that's taught. Whatever they're comfortable with and whatever works, the coaches allow those guys to flourish in those roles. And that's something that stood out to Marvin Jones. He wanted to be a straight up edge rusher, put his hands in the dirt, get after the quarterback, and he saw the production from FSU the last couple of years from their defensive ends, and also what the coaching staff let their defensive ends do. So again, he played sparingly at the University of Georgia these past couple of years, being in the backup role for sure this past year. But as you guys know, as far as the talent standpoint, Alabama and University of Georgia, they have the best talent in the country, and it's not far, and especially on the defensive line. So that's not a knock against Marvin Jones Jr. when you're a red shirt sophomore, or you're a red shirt freshman rather, in rotation at the University of Georgia. That's not a bad thing. So you come to FSU with 3 years left to play. 3 years left to play. So again, that's been a thing, right? Bringing in guys with multiple years of eligibility. So I think Marvin Jones would definitely come in and compete for a starter position along with Sione and Tomiwa. Those guys will be competing this upcoming year for a starting position for FSU. At the very least, we're going to have very good depth and that's another thing I want to touch on as far as the depth component. If you look at years past for FSU, the defensive end room, it's been top tier talent. And then once you kind of get into the second tier of guys, from a size standpoint, this production standpoint all around, it's not the same as Patrick Payton and Jared Verse. So again, you bring in guys, all these guys are 250 pounds plus, right? We're not going to be able to get bullied on the edge. We're going to have some edge setter guys, physical guys that look the part as far as the defensive end room. It can make a lot of plays for FSU. Marvin Jones should be competing for playing time for sure this upcoming spring. A few more guys I want to touch on. Jaden Jones, the 6'5", 250-pound product. He was the number one JUCO defensive end a few years ago. He came into FSU, like I said, highly regarded, top 5 JUCO player in the nation, number 1 overall as far as the defensive end position, but towards ACL toward the end of his last season in junior college. So this past season was more so of a rehabilitation year for Jaden Jones. Now it's time to cash in on those checks, right? It's time to make those plays to show why you are the number 1 defensive end out of the country from the JUCO ranks. Like I said, the physical tools are there. 6'5", 250 pounds. You look at his film from JUCO, very explosive, sideline to sideline type of guy. Has he lost some of that explosion due to the injury? It's going to be interesting to see. He should be attacking this offseason very aggressively as far as with Coach Storms. Good at that bulk muscle mass, get stronger, this, that, and other, and show why you were highly regarded coming out this upcoming spring practice. So it's going to be a chance for him to compete as well. Again, 6'5", 250 pounds. You see the body type and things like that. He's going to be a guy that we're going to be looking for this upcoming season as far as competing for some playing time. It's going to be pretty much a make or break year for him. Next up, we have Byron Turner out of New Orleans, Louisiana. Again, Byron Turner played some pretty good ball for FSU this past year as a main backup, as a redshirt sophomore. The main issues with Byron Turner was just a size perspective, just weight and things like that. He's a physical guy with a high motor, but when he went against bigger offensive tackles in certain situations, he got washed out a little bit due to his size. So this upcoming winter portion, spring, this, that, and another should be gaining weight, adding more bulk. He's a physical player as it is, just needs to get stronger and things like that. He was the main backup this upcoming year. He will be competing for playing time as well. 6'4", 244 pounds last year. If he could get within that 250 range, like I was saying, with like the other defensive ends, again, we have the room looks totally different from a depth perspective. So we'll look really good in that regard. So again, I think Byron Turner, he's going to be another key piece as far as depth. He needs to add on to what he did this past year to stay within the 2 deep rotation. There's going to be a lot of competition for that, and that's why I say it's going to be interesting to watch. Last, we have Lamont Green Jr. He was a true freshman this past year, had a shoulder injury that derailed him from the entire season, around 6'3", 220 pounds. This upcoming season, I feel like it's going to be more so getting stronger, getting in that weight room. I don't foresee him being a factor this upcoming season in the rotation for his redshirt sophomore year. But next year, for his his redshirt freshman year, but next year for his redshirt sophomore year is when we should start seeing those dividends, those the body changing. We're working out with Coach Storms and things like that. that's when he should be competing for some playing time for FSU. So in a nutshell, that's the defensive end position. I do think the overall talent in the room is a lot better. The overall talent is a lot better. The overall size is a lot better. Maybe we don't have that premium type of player or players that's like a Jared Verse, things like that. But overall, in totality, I do feel like the room is a lot better. And when you got guys like, say, for instance, Jared Verse, who needs to come out and then take a breather due to those, going hard and just the trenches in itself in general, you got to have fresh defensive alignment. So again, when that Jared Verse technically comes out of the game, I don't think it'll be any drop off with any defensive end we insert within the game. I'm very comfortable. I'm pretty sure the staff is very comfortable with what they did this all season as far as addressing that room from a depth perspective, a size perspective, and a talent perspective. So I think all three of those perspectives have been covered from FSU's end, and I think due to that, we'll have more production within the defensive end room overall. So again, you don't have that Jared Verse star, but the totality of the room can be very good. And also, how Patrick Payton was playing last year, you never know. You could have that Jared Verse star in him this upcoming year. But again, that's the defensive end position. You guys know I love defensive linemen and trenches, right? So next up, we have defensive tackles. Odell's baby. It should be very interesting as well. Let me know in the comments who you guys feel like will be the most productive defensive end for FSU this upcoming year out of the new guys that we added. Again, like this video, subscribe to the channel. Go Noles.